Imagine that it's your day off,
Mm-hmm.
and you're sitting peacefully at home, completely relaxed, and suddenly the main water pipe bursts.
Oh, man, that is a real disaster.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, water is just blasting out under tremendous pressure. Your handmade Persian carpets are getting soaked. Your wooden furniture is being completely destroyed, and your whole place is basically turning into a disaster zone.
Right. It's one of those scenarios where literally every single second counts.
So naturally, you urgently call a plumber. And he arrives, takes one look at the flood that's swallowing your entire life, and, well, he probably doesn't do anything.
Wait, what?
Yeah, even worse, he walks over, sits down on a chair, and with this incredibly calm expression, he just says, look, don't do anything. Just sit right here. Observe the water as it rises. Don't judge the water in any way. And try to be kind to this flood.
I mean, that is beyond absurd. If a professional did that, you'd think they were having a complete break from reality.
Right. So what would you do?
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd throw him out of the house right then and there. And I think anyone listening would do the exact same thing.
Oh, absolutely.
You'd throw him out and you'd run straight to the main shutoff valve to turn the water off yourself. And that's a completely natural and logical reaction. Because look, in the physical real world, we simply don't have time for illusions or word games,
No, not at all. When a crisis happens, you want action.
Exactly. You want someone to immediately shut off the main valve so that further damage can be prevented. It's that simple.
Yeah.
We don't reward passive approaches in the physical world.
We demand a mechanical intervention to just stop the leak.
Right. So let's unpack this idea, because here lies a massive and honestly kind of painful contradiction. When it comes to the human mind and the psyche, classical psychology and traditional mindfulness methods have basically been playing the exact role of that insane plumber for decades.
Yeah, it really is a perfect analogy when you think about it.
Right. I mean, they've been telling us for years, just sit right here and quietly observe the flood of your intrusive thoughts, stress, and anxiety without judgment.
It is a striking contradiction when you frame it that way. We tolerate a level of passivity with our mental health that we would absolutely never accept with our physical property.
Never. And that brings us to the actual mission of today's deep dive. We are exploring a pretty groundbreaking collection of works by Master Kaaran and a system known as Delta Meditation.
And the reason we are looking at these specific sources today is that they argue, and they provide really rigorous neurological evidence for this claim, that almost everything we've been taught about achieving mental peace is biologically completely upside down.
It's time to stop watching the flood and learn how to finally shut off the main valve of the mind. But to do that, I think we first have to understand why that old plumber's advice is so dangerous.
Right, because on the surface, traditional mindfulness sounds really appealing, doesn't it?
Yeah. Just watch your thoughts pass by like clouds in the sky. I mean, what is actually happening in the brain when we do that?
Well, to understand the danger, we have to look at brainwave frequencies. So when you are going about your normal active day, your brain is operating in what's called a beta frequency.
Okay.
It's alert, it's analytical, and it basically has its defense mechanisms up. But when you sit down, close your eyes and try to relax into traditional meditation, your brain waves actually slow down into an alpha frequency.
Wait, but alpha is generally considered a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Like it's that relaxed, focused state you hit right before you fall asleep or when you're deeply engrossed in a book.
It is relaxing, yeah, but it comes with a major biological vulnerability.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When your brain enters an alpha state, the analytical barrier of your conscious mind drops. Your subconscious mind becomes highly suggestible. It is very similar to a hypnotic state, actually.
Oh.
So if you sit in this highly vulnerable state and you invite your intrusive thoughts in merely to look at them or observe them without judgment, those anxieties completely bypass all of your normal psychological resistance.
So instead of just watching the floodwater, you are actively letting it seep directly into the foundation of your house. Like you're giving the anxiety a VIP pass into your subconscious.
That is the biological reality, yes.
Huh?
And it goes even further than just suggestibility. There is a structural consequence to this passivity.
What do you mean?
Well, in neuroscience, it is a well-established fact that attention is literally energy. It's an electrical and chemical currency in the brain. So when you spend time looking at your intrusive thoughts, you are directing vital cognitive energy toward them.
Yeah, that does what?
This process physically thickens and charges the neural circuits associated with those very thoughts.
So you're literally feeding the monster.
Exactly. You are feeding a specific network called the default mode network, or the DMN. The DMN is essentially the brain's thought factory. It is the biological seat of your ego, your past regrets, your future anxieties, and, that relentless, exhausting internal monologue.
I know that monologue very well.
Right. And when you passively observe your thoughts, you are giving the DMN the exact electrical fuel it needs to survive and grow stronger.
There is an analogy from the sources that perfectly captures the absurdity of trying to fix the mind this way. They point out that using the mind to analyze and cure the mind's own intrusive thoughts is exactly like asking a professional counterfeiter to expert analyze and correct his own forged documents.
That's a great way to put it. It highlights a massive conflict of interest. The mind is the very machine generating the chaos in the first place.
Which makes me want to really push back on classical psychology's whole framework here. If the mind is this highly deceptive machine that created the stress loops and the panic to begin with, why on earth do we assume we can negotiate with it?
It's a fundamental flaw in the logic.
Right. For the mind, achieving true silence means a kind of death. It's going to fight back. It's going to disguise itself as like deep analysis or mindful enlightenment just to keep you thinking and keep that default mode network powered up.
So if we accept that we cannot negotiate with the mind and we cannot use the mind to fix the mind, you are left with a very practical problem.
Which is, how do you stop the machine?
Exactly.
We need a manual shutoff valve. We need a mechanical way to cut the power supply to that thought factory without asking the factory's permission. And the sources introduce a primary delta meditation technique for this, but I'll admit the concept sounds a little bit out there. It's called Koda.
Yes, which translates roughly to an absolute elimination protocol.
Right, and the instructions are intense. You sit down and you consciously imagine absolute non-existence. No earth, no sky, no stars, no space. Even the vacuum of space is gone. Imagine you aren't even wearing clothes.
Wow, just complete nothingness.
Exactly. Everything from your skin outward simply ceases to exist. You become the only existence in the universe. And logic is, if you are the only existence, there is no past, no future, and critically, no external subjects to think about. By eliminating the subjects, you trap the mind.
Right, because without external objects to process, the mind is simply starved material.
But practically speaking, how is a modern person supposed to just imagine absolute nothingness? I mean, our brains are wired to constantly think and process. It sounds like an impossible mental gymnastics trick. I can imagine trying this and just thinking about how hard I'm trying to think about nothing.
That is a very fair skepticism, and honestly, if Koda were just a poetic visualization, it probably wouldn't work at all. But it is actually a rigorous biochemical resetting mechanism.
Okay, lay it on me.
Let's look at the neurological reality of what happens when you attempt this. The primary event takes place in the superior parietal lobe, which is near the top back of your head. Specifically, it targets an area scientists call the Orientation Association Area, or the OAA.
So what does the OAA actually do? Is it like the brain's GPS system or something?
Yeah, think of it as the brain's orientation radar. The OAA is responsible for creating the physical boundary between yourself and the outside world. Right now, as we speak, it is constantly calculating where your physical body ends and where the chair you are sitting on begins.
Interesting.
It relies on a continuous stream of sensory input, touch, sight, sound, spatial awareness to draw that physical map.
Okay, so it's always running in the background, anchoring me to the room.
Constantly. Now, when you consciously alter your mental geometry through the Koda meditation, when you aggressively imagine absolute boundlessness, no sky, no earth, no room around you, you are deliberately blocking sensory inputs to the OAA.
You're starving the radar of data.
Yes. And because it has no data to process physical boundaries, its electrical activity drops drastically. It physically powers down.
That is wild.
It really is. This creates an organic, temporary shutdown of your spatial orientation. You experience a state of absolute spacelessness and timelessness, and because the default mode network relies on your orientation in space and time to generate anxieties about the past and future,
Oh, I see where this is going.
shutting down the OAA cuts the physical fuel to the thought factory. The main valve is mechanically shut.
That is fascinating. It's a biological hack, not a philosophy. And I really appreciate that the sources make this practical for daily life too. You don't need to retreat to a sensory deprivation tank to pull this off.
Right.
They give this amazing example about washing dishes.
Oh yes, it is a perfect demonstration of applying this in motion.
Let's say you're standing at the sink. You apply this exact same elimination protocol. Mentally, you eliminate the entire universe. Your office, your commute, the news, the rest of your house.
Yeah.
It all ceases to exist. But then to that empty void, you add back only three things: you, the sink, and the dishes.
You are intentionally redrawing the boundary of your existence.
Exactly. And your mind, because it's desperate for any boundary, immediately accepts this new, tiny universe and locks onto it. In this state, washing dishes isn't a tedious chore anymore. The action itself becomes the meditation.
And more importantly, your vital cognitive energy stops leaking away to anxieties about tomorrow's meeting or an argument you had yesterday.
Yes, the concept of the energy leak is crucial here.
It really is. In traditional Sanskrit texts, they describe two distinct states of awareness. When you are looking outward, engaging with external objects, absorbing the news, stressing about relationships, your awareness is constantly being plundered. This outward-facing, energy-draining state is called bahirmukha.
The sources have a great line about this. They say that in that outward state, even a tiny, worthless piece of straw blowing in the wind can completely captivate your attention and pull you out of yourself.
And if a piece of straw can hijack your brain's processing power, just imagine what financial stress, social media, and interpersonal conflict do.
It's exhausting.
But when you apply the Koda technique, even while doing something mundane like washing dishes, you shift your awareness entirely inward. You center the energy on the self. This centered inward state is called antarmukh. By maintaining that tiny boundary, you stop the hypnotic programming of your subconscious by the external world.
Okay, so we've mechanically shut the main valve. We've stopped the massive outward leak of energy. But the sources point out a huge problem next.
Right, the hidden leak.
Yeah. Once you drop the baseline noise of your intrusive thoughts, you start to notice another leak. A hidden energy drain in your brain that you previously ignored because the background static was just too loud.
This is perhaps the most disturbing discovery in the Delta sources, honestly. It introduces the concept of compulsory visualization.
This completely changed how I think about my own brain. What exactly is compulsory visualization?
It appears to be an evolutionary bug in human hardware. Throughout our lives, our brains have developed an automatic mechanism that converts almost every single sound we hear into a visual image, frame by frame, completely without our permission.
Let's test this right now for anyone listening. If I just say the phrase, "A little rabbit is eating a carrot on the snow,"
Instantly, the brain of every person listening just sketched the white snow, the gray or white rabbit, and the orange carrot. You didn't consciously choose to imagine that scene. Your brain's rendering engine booted up and painted it automatically.
and if you're listening to this deep dive on your commute right now, your brain is likely forcing images of every billboard you pass, every snippet of conversation you overhear on the train, and every single lyric on the radio.
It's a constant drain.
The sources point out that this automatic mechanism runs 24 hours a day. It consumes an unimaginable amount of the brain's vital energy and cognitive bandwidth.
They actually argue that reaching mental silence, just shutting down the intrusive thoughts, is only 1% of the path. Shutting down this compulsory image production is the other 99% of preserving your mental energy.
I have to challenge this though, because everything in modern pop psychology tells us that visualization is a superpower. Like success coaches tell us to visualize our goals, athletes visualize their routines, people use vision boards to manifest reality. Are the sources saying all of that is just a waste of energy?
Well, it requires a vital distinction. There is a massive functional difference between conscious, intentional visualization, where you use your willpower to actively imagine a goal for a specific purpose, and this automatic, exhausting, forced visualization that runs continuously in the background like a computer virus.
Okay, that makes sense.
One is a tool you pick up and use. The other is a parasite using your hardware without your consent.
Got it. So how do we stop the parasite? How do we turn off the automatic rendering engine?
The ultimate goal is to reach what the text calls the pure observer state. This is defined as achieving the ability to hear without brain processing.
Hearing without processing, how do you actually train that?
The technique is remarkably straightforward, though it requires a lot of discipline. You put on a movie, a radio drama, or just listen to a conversation. But instead of letting your mind paint the picture of what is being said, you consciously focus all your attention on your own inner silence.
Just focusing on the silence underneath the sound.
Right. You keep practicing this shift in focus. When a word comes in and the brain tries to attach an image to it, you pull your focus back to the silence. Eventually, the brain simply receives the acoustic data of the sound but refuses to generate images in response.
You literally trained your brain to just hear. That must free up a staggering amount of processing power.
Oh, absolutely.
But this brings up a major stress test for this entire system. It's one thing to shut down forced visualization while you're calmly washing dishes or doing a listening exercise in your living room. What happens when a real crisis hits?
Ah, the survival hijack.
Yeah. What happens when a sudden craving, a burst of anger, or a high-stakes financial trade threatens to blast that main water valve wide open again?
That is the ultimate test of any mental framework. What happens when the survival system hijacks the brain? Whether it is a sudden panic attack, intense road rage, or the extreme stress of day trading, the biological mechanics are identical.
Which are what?
In moments of crisis, the amygdala, which is the brain's primitive alarm, bell hijacks the neocortex, which is the logical, analytical part of your brain.
I like to think of the amygdala hijack like a tripped circuit breaker. When a crisis hits, the survival system trips the breaker, plunging the entire house into darkness. So the rational mind, the neocortex, can't even see the control panels to fix the problem.
That's a highly accurate way to visualize it. Logical analysis is entirely stripped away, and you are left with blind, instinctive fight-or-flight reactions. You cannot simply think your way out of an amygdala hijack because the thinking part of your brain has literally been taken offline.
Which is why classical psychology's advice to just sit and analyze your feelings in the middle of a panic attack is like putting a Band-Aid on a severed artery. You can't analyze anything in the dark.
Precisely. You need a mechanical override to flip the breaker back on.
And the sources provide one called the Narcissus Breath Protocol. It sounds poetic, but they map out the hardcore biology behind it. The instructions are, you imagine smelling a deeply fragrant flower, like a narcissus, a jasmine, or a rose. You take a long, slow, deep inhalation through your nose, vividly imagining that beautiful scent, and then you exhale deeply, letting pure peace flow into your body.
It is essential to break down why this works biologically, so it isn't dismissed as just a cheap relaxation trick. This is a biological override sequence. It relies on the olfactory nerve, the nerve responsible for your sense of smell.
Why smell, though? Why not sight or hearing?
Because the olfactory nerve is biologically unique. Unlike sight or hearing, which have to pass through the brain's thalamus to be filtered and processed, the olfactory nerve connects directly to the amygdala and the hippocampus.
So it's a literal backdoor into the survival system.
Exactly. It bypasses the locked doors of the conscious mind. By vividly imagining a beautiful, safe scent, you send a direct signal to the hypothalamus.
And what does that do?
This initiates the immediate release of serotonin and dopamine, the neurotransmitters associated with joy and safety. Simultaneously, the physical act of deep abdominal breathing switches your body from the stressed fight-or-flight sympathetic nervous system over to the calm, rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system.
I mean, I imagine taking a deep breath relaxes the muscles, but you're saying this actually changes the brain's electrical output as well.
Radically. It pulls the brain out of those chaotic, panic-driven beta frequencies we discussed earlier. It forces the brainwaves to drop down into alpha, then theta, and eventually into delta. Now, in medical science, delta waves usually signify deep, dreamless sleep and cellular repair.
But you're awake.
Right. Through this protocol, you are accessing that state of deep neurological repair while remaining fully awake, alert, and in command.
You essentially force the amygdala to stand down by flooding it with safety signals through the back door. I love how the sources connect this mechanical approach to overcoming bad habits, too. They talk about smoking or even just chronic anger and explain it through what they call the habit triangle.
The habit triangle is a brilliant way to map addiction and compulsion. The three nodes are the intrusive thought, which triggers the automatic neural circuit, which then demands the dopamine reward.
So an intrusive thought about a cigarette pops up. The automatic circuit fires, creating physical tension in the body, and the brain demands a hit of dopamine to relieve that tension. And traditional methods fail because they usually only fight the craving at the very end of the line, just using sheer willpower.
Which is exhausting and usually totally unsustainable.
But with the delta methods, you attack the entire triangle. First, you use the Koda Elimination protocol to block the intrusive thought from even landing. But the most fascinating part is how they handle the emotional circuits, like anger. They advocate for something called conscious anger.
Which sounds like an oxymoron. Why would anyone choose to be angry?
That was my exact thought. But it makes perfect neurological sense when you break it down. Normally, anger is a blind reaction. Someone cuts you off in traffic and you just explode. But they say you should practice choosing your anger. If you feel the physical sensation of anger rising, you consciously step in and say, I am choosing to express anger right now. I am in control of this emotion.
By making it a conscious choice rather than a blind reaction, you force the prefrontal cortex, which is the logic and supervision center of the brain, to actively supervise the emotional limbic system.
You bring the lights back on in the house.
You do. And in doing so, you are physically disabling the old impulsive neural circuits. By turning an automatic explosion into a highly engineered, supervised response, your brain learns that it doesn't need to automatically blow a fuse every time it faces friction. You sever the automatic circuit in the habit triangle. You basically become the absolute ruler of your own reactions.
The external world can no longer dictate your internal state. No one can make you angry unless you expressly permit it.
It's true sovereignty over your own hardware.
Let's step back and look at the journey we've taken today. We started with a flooded house and a terrible plumber telling us to just watch the water ruin our lives. We've learned that we do not have to just sit back and watch the flood of our anxieties and intrusive thoughts.
We actually have the biological mechanics to change the hardware itself.
Right. We can use the Kun-A meditation to organically shut down the default mode network by erasing the boundaries of the external world, turning an outward energy leak into an inward focus. We can train ourselves out of forced visualization, saving massive amounts of cognitive bandwidth by simply hearing without rendering unnecessary images. And when the pressure spikes and the circuit breaker trips, we can use the narcissus breath to biologically hack our olfactory nerve, overriding our survival instincts and shutting down panic in seconds. We actually have the tools to be the sovereign rulers of our own minds.
It represents a profound shift in how we understand human capability. And, it leaves us with a rather provocative question to ponder, inspired directly by the source text.
Oh yeah, this part is wild.
We discussed how forced visualization, automatically seeing images when we hear words, is essentially an evolutionary bug. Our brains literally synthesize a visual reality out of acoustic data. We see sounds instead of just hearing them.
Yeah, the rabbit in the snow.
Exactly. This raises a fascinating possibility. Are we heading toward a future where human hearing slowly disappears entirely, transforming into a new, highly evolved form of internal vision?
Oh man, that is a wild concept.
And if our brains are already doing that with sound, automatically generating a false visual reality in a fraction of a second without our consent, what other illusions is our mental hardware automatically constructing right in front of us every single second of the day? What parts of our reality are just the brain aggressively rendering things that aren't actually there?
That is a thought that is going to stick with me for a long time. And it brings us right back to the flooded house. If you don't know who is controlling the main valve, you're going to spend your entire life frantically mopping up water that isn't even real. It's time to fire the plumber, find the valve, and shut the water off yourself.